In the vastness of ancient times, the figure of Elijah emerges, a prophet whose life and work transcend the boundaries of common history. Known as the one who challenged kings and gods, Elijah was not just a messenger of God but a divine instrument of change and restoration. His epic saga, marked by miracles and celestial confrontations, echoes through the centuries, inspiring both believers and the curious to explore the mysteries of faith and supernatural intervention. In this captivating account, dive into the extraordinary journey of Elijah, from his divine calling to his prophecies that echoed until the times of the New Testament. Prepare to uncover the secrets and meanings behind the life of this man who, with a simple prayer, made the sky open and rain fall on a thirsty land. Elijah's calling. Elijah, an enigmatic figure of the scriptures, emerges in the historical scene of Israel with a divine calling as powerful as the very nature he controlled. His journey begins in tumultuous times, where idolatry and spiritual decay dominated the land. Called by God to confront King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, Elijah not only represented the prophetic voice of rebuke but also the hope of spiritual restoration for a wayward nation. His mission was not just to proclaim words but to directly confront the structures of sin that had taken over the land. At the epicenter of this confrontation was the fight against idolatry, where temples and altars were erected in homage to foreign gods. Elijah, as an intrepid prophet and God's spokesperson, found himself challenging not only temporal authority but also the ingrained beliefs that had led the people away from God. With sharp words and acts of courage, he exposed the futility of idols and the true magnitude of the one God he served. Each confrontation was a demonstration not just of supernatural power but also of unwavering commitment to spiritual purity and righteousness. The miracles that accompanied Elijah's ministry were vivid testimonies of divine providence in times of crisis and despair. From multiplying scarce food to raising the dead, each supernatural act was not just an isolated event but a constant reminder of God's care and intervention in human history. These miracles not only fed the physical body but also restored faith and hope in a people who had forgotten God's promise. Elijah thus became not just a prophet but a living manifestation of God's power and grace for those who sincerely sought him. Miracles and divine provisions. Miracles and divine provisions were distinctive marks of Elijah's ministry, evidencing not just his role as a prophet but also God's supernatural intervention in Israel's history. In a moment of extreme scarcity, Elijah was sent by God to a widow in Zarephath, where flour and oil did not run out during the prolonged drought. This miracle not only sustained the widow and her son but also demonstrated God's faithfulness in meeting the needs of his servants even in times of crisis. Another notable episode was the resurrection of the Shunammite woman's son. Moved by compassion and the mother's intercession, Elijah implored God for the dead child's life. In response to his fervent prayer, God restored life to the boy, a powerful testimony of God's restorative power and Elijah's ability to operate as a channel of divine miracles. Besides the miracles of provision and resurrection, Elijah also prayed for rain during a prolonged drought in Israel. Through his persistent prayer and trust in God, he not only announced the arrival of rain but also witnessed the immediate fulfillment of this divine promise. Each miracle performed by Elijah not only demonstrated God's supernatural power but also reaffirmed Elijah's prophetic authority as the chosen messenger for his people. Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal and Asherah. The challenge on Mount Carmel marked one of the most dramatic and significant moments in Elijah's life as God's prophet. Directly confronting the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, Elijah proposed a test of fire to determine who was truly the living God. This confrontation was not just a clash between religious ideologies but a public demonstration of God's supremacy over all pagan deities. On Mount Carmel, Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal to invoke their God to light a prepared sacrifice. Despite their rituals and desperate cries, Baal remained silent and inert. In contrast, Elijah prepared the Lord's altar, demonstrating unwavering confidence and faith in God. His simple and sincere prayer was immediately answered with fire from heaven, consuming not just the sacrifice but also the water around the altar. This event not only humiliated the worshippers of Baal but also reaffirmed God's authority and power in front of all Israel. The confrontation on Mount Carmel was not just a demonstration of supernatural power but also a call to repentance and true worship. By witnessing God's direct manifestation, the people of Israel were led to recognize the true nature of God and turn away from the idolatry that had spread across the land. Elijah not only restored the people's faith but also reaffirmed his role as the chosen prophet to guide Israel back to the path of righteousness and pure worship. The victory on Mount Carmel. Elijah's victory over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel not only reaffirmed God's divine authority but also brought a fulfilled promise of restoration. After the miracle of fire from heaven, Elijah proclaimed the imminent arrival of rain, thus ending a prolonged period of drought and famine in Israel. He climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, prostrated in prayer, and sent his servant to check the horizon for signs of rain. After 7 times, a cloud the size of a human hand appeared over the sea, announcing God's response to Elijah's intercession. The rain that followed was more than just a meteorological phenomenon. It was a tangible sign of the spiritual and physical restoration that God brought to his nation. The dry and arid lands were revived, crops were restored, and the people of Israel witnessed God's transformative power in their daily lives. The victory on Mount Carmel was not just an isolated event but a turning point in Israel's history, marking the beginning of a spiritual renewal and a return to true and exclusive worship of God. This episode not only consolidated Elijah's position as one of Israel's greatest prophets but also strengthened the people's faith in God's providence and care. Elijah not only interceded for the rain but also modeled for Israel the importance of persevering faith and unwavering trust in God's power. His life and ministry continued to be a living testimony of the God who not only hears but also responds to his people's prayers with abundant grace and mercy. Jezebel's persecution and Elijah's flight. After the impressive display of power on Mount Carmel, Elijah faced a new and intense trial, the relentless persecution by Jezebel. The queen, enraged by the defeat of her prophets, vowed vengeance against God's prophet. Fearing for his life, Elijah fled into the desert seeking refuge and divine protection. Elijah's flight was not just an act of fear but also a moment of physical and emotional exhaustion. He found himself under a tree, wishing for death, exhausted by the pressures and persecutions he faced. In this moment of despair, God not only provided physically for Elijah but also strengthened him spiritually. An angel was sent to feed and encourage him, preparing him for the next stage of his journey. During his time in the desert, Elijah experienced a powerful manifestation of God in a gentle whisper. Amid the turmoil and chaos of his life, God revealed himself to Elijah not through grand phenomena but through a calm and quiet voice. This experience not only renewed Elijah's faith but also prepared him to continue his mission as God's prophet, facing challenges with renewed courage and determination. The end of Elijah's ministry and his legacy. The end of Elijah's ministry marked not only the conclusion of his prophetic mission but also the beginning of his enduring legacy in Israel's history. After facing intense trials and persecutions, Elijah was called by God to pass his prophetic mantle to Elisha, designating him as his successor. This symbolic act not only ensured the continuity of the prophetic line but also highlighted the importance of faithfulness and obedience to God in the succession of prophets. Besides the immediate impact of his ministry, Elijah's prophecies about John the Baptist and Jesus underscore his ongoing relevance in the biblical narrative. Malachi and Luke mention that John the Baptist would come in the spirit and power of Elijah, thus fulfilling Malachi's prophecy about the coming of a precursor who would prepare the way for the Messiah. This connection between Elijah and John the Baptist underscores the continuity of the prophetic message and the spiritual preparation for the arrival of Jesus Christ. Furthermore, during Jesus' transfiguration, Elijah and Moses appeared alongside Jesus, highlighting Elijah's importance in the Judeo-Christian tradition. His presence beside Jesus symbolizes the continuity of the law and the prophets and his future coming to prepare the way for Christ's glorious return. Elijah's legacy continues to inspire generations of believers today, not only for the courage and determination demonstrated in his life but also for his unwavering faithfulness to God and trust in the fulfillment of divine promises. As we explore the life and legacy of Elijah, we are confronted with the depth of commitment to God and the courage to face challenges with unwavering faith. His story is not just an ancient account but a living testimony of divine intervention in human history. Just as Elijah confronted the powers of idolatry and manifested God's power through miracles, we are called to apply these principles in our own spiritual journey. Like Elijah, we may face moments of spiritual drought and intense challenges, but we must remember that God is faithful to meet our needs and empower us to fulfill our mission. May each of us, inspired by Elijah's life, seek true worship, faithfulness to God, and the courage to proclaim the gospel message in a world that needs it so much. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue exploring transformative stories like Elijah's and receive more inspiring insights for your spiritual journey. Together, we can move forward, confident in the promise that, just as God guided and sustained Elijah, He will also guide and sustain us in our own walk of faith.